So this is our Blackberry Bramble, and I believe the other drink that you have is the Savannah Mule. So we won't have time to go through that today, but hopefully you guys will be able to use your kits later this weekend. And cheers. Happy summer. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you very, very much, Darby. Really appreciate it. My coffee feels quite boring now. But
I know. It's noon in Los Angeles, so.
No,
Thank you, Darby.
Thank you. That was awesome. And now moving forward, I'd like to introduce Donald McClure, CFO of Palatos. Donald, if you'd like, I'll pass it over to you to do a quick introduction on yourself, and I've got a few questions for you.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Joe and Bridget. My name is Donald McClure. I'm the CFO at Palatos. We are as Joe mentioned earlier, Tritium Partners-backed healthcare IT company based in Plano, outside of Dallas, Texas. And my personal background, I've been with Concero for about 2 years. With Palatos for about 2 years. Concero has been with us for about 3 years. I previously was at Brinks Home Security as VP of Corporate Development and FP&A, and have an investment banking background prior to that at Raymond James.
Awesome. Thank you, Donald. And, how did Tritium Partners and even the Palatos CEO describe the CFO role to you when you were being onboarded, and what were the chief priorities for you?
Sure. So our situation prior to Tritium, it was a husband and wife entrepreneurial team that had built our company. Tritium came in, took a majority stake in the company, and with the thesis of hiring a CEO and building a real professional management team and setting the company up to scale. The founders had kind of taken it as far as they could take it. So part of that was obviously bringing in finance and accounting organization that they were, for example, still using cash accounting in QuickBooks. And so there was, they put debt on the business to acquire it. So there was a lot that needed to get done on that front. They brought Concero in right away to do a lot of that actually happened before I got here. But what they wanted out of me was not an accounting CFO, so to speak, but more of a strategic CFO. So having the FP&A background and the investment banking background, corporate development, those types of things, and not so much just a controller kind of CFO. So it wanted someone who could serve as a strategic sounding board to the CEO and help create enterprise value.
No, thank you. That makes perfect sense. I'd say most of our clients are typically looking for the same type of background and responsibilities. And then with Tritium Partners, so as you mentioned, they were working with Concero without a CFO for about the first year when they had invested in Palatos. Sorry. How did you find the finance function when you first came on board at Palatos?
It was functioning very well, actually. There was our VP of finance at Concero is sort of how they organize things, was running things as if he was basically the CFO. He was working directly with our CEO to have an entirely outsourced finance and accounting function. The books were, the invoices were going out, cash was getting collected, collections, follow-ups were happening, the books were getting closed, the reports were coming out. There was a process all in place and very functional that worked for our CEO's needs.
That makes sense. And then what is the biggest value that you get out of Concero's finance as a service?
I think a lot of it is not having to hire, train, and fire, do all the performance management that I would have to do to have an internal team. I only have one employee on my team, and she's an FP&A manager, but really an all-around kind of just this helper to do whatever's needed, because I've got HR, legal, facilities, pretty much anything business support related falls under me. So she helps with a lot of that stuff. Not having to worry about the team and sort of the people management side as much, and focusing on just reviewing the numbers and helping our CEO on things that the things that he wants me to be working on that are more value added, and not just making sure that the close process is dialed in, because Kinsera takes care of all of that. Another thing that I think goes really well for us with Kinsera is the audit process, the annual audit. I really barely have to do anything. I get asked a couple of questions along the way, but our team at Kinsera works directly with the auditors, and supplies all the information, responds to all the requests, and they produce the audit without really much from me at all. And we've had similarly, we've refinanced our debt once, and have gone through all the diligence related to all of that, and Kinsera is able to take a checklist from whoever's asking for materials and work through it and produce really quality responses. I'm used to having to cross-check and make sure that everything is internally consistent. We've never really had any issues supplying information to people, so that's all been very good.
That's awesome to hear. And then with Kinsera handling the finance function as a fully managed service with the finance as a service offering, what strategic initiatives were you able to focus on and pursue?
Yeah, so right out of the gate when I got here, we had, when Tritium bought the company, before even my CEO was hired, they like I said, borrowed money to do it. The capital structure that they put in place and the covenant package didn't really work for the business longer term as they got more into things. So one of the first things we had to do was to work with the bank to fix that, to either refinance it or restructure what we had. So I had to jump straight into that. Obviously, Kinsera helped a lot with that, but that was something I had to come up to speed on and really focus on that, as opposed to the close process or hiring accounting team members. The other things that he's wanted me to be focused on are operating metrics and building, because we were a very young company that didn't have a lot in the way of metrics. So working with all of our department leaders to come up with what their key operating metrics are within their world, and organizing it and pulling it together in a way that that we can review on a weekly basis and see what's going on in the business.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you. And then, this past year and a half has been quite odd for all of us. How did Kinsera's finance as a service help during COVID and through the past year and a half or so?
Yeah, it's been great, I'd say. We, as a company, we went to a fully remote workforce, just like a lot of people did in March 2020. We've just barely started having some in-person stuff. One aspect of it, Kinsera is by its nature an outsourced partner of ours. So we were used to working together via Zoom anyway, so that we didn't really miss a beat from that standpoint, because we were managing that way as it was. As things ramped up, I think probably a lot of that a lot of the work gets done in India through Kinsera. So there have been some challenges with COVID in India, certainly, and it hasn't been as quick to get vaccinated and everything that's going on in the U.S. So, and even with the recent flare-ups, the management at Kinsera has been very proactive. And initially, when the pandemic started, sort of coming up with a plan, getting their people set up to be able to work remotely. And we really haven't missed a beat. We've managed through all of it, just as if they're in the office. So.
No, that's good to hear. We're very happy about that. And then what would you say, this is my last question, what would you say is the biggest advantages to the finance as a service model that we bring?
Yeah, so I think I kind of touched on it earlier, but not having to manage the people side as much, I can kind of focus on the numbers and building, in our case, building the infrastructure we need to try to grow the company, and not just focused on the nitty gritty of, the monthly close process and debits and credits and all that. So, I can review the outputs and use it to drive change that we need identify areas for opportunity, and try to set ourselves up for continued growth. The whole order to close, order to cash, and our close process is handled by Concero. We've got the full stack of everything that they're doing for us, and so I don't have to get too involved until we have some clients that like to not pay until someone more senior reaches out, and I deal with those. But generally speaking, Concero handles all that stuff for us, and it just works. So.
No, that makes perfect sense.
It
And hey, we're
goes really smoothly.
happy to hear that. Awesome. So I'm going to actually open it up to all the attendees. Any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to either come across on microphone, or you could also type it into the chat box at the bottom.
Hi, Don. This is Chip Stepaker. Thanks for taking us through it. Sounds really interesting. Can you kind of talk about a little bit the way you thought about the cost? You talked about the benefits for sure, but kind of like the cost benefit trade-off. And, as a growth company, obviously you have an eye on costs as well as the strategic opportunities, but, you're looking at your cost structure as well, and kind of how you thought about that with respect to Concero.
Yeah. No, and I think that's an important and it's an obvious question. If someone was looking to bring Concero in, I would say that I get from Concero a very cost-effective finance and accounting organization. We, at our stage of growth, every dollar that we don't have to invest in the finance and business support side of the house can be invested in growth, and that's what my private equity partners want. That's what our CEO wants. They don't want me to have to hire a bunch of people, pay for benefits. It's expensive to build all that out. And what I get from Concero, because we're a pretty small company, about 50 people employed. We don't need obviously a full-time vice president of finance, a full-time controller, a full-time, all the way up and down the stack of what you would typically have in finance and accounting. But what I get is all those different pieces. I get a fraction of that in one of my Concero people, and so I get that experience and expertise of the higher level person, but also all of the people below that are processing our invoices and dealing with vendor payments and whatnot. So it's it's definitely very cost effective for where we are.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions from anyone?
Joe, I had one that came in my inbox. They wanted to send their question. What advice would you give a CFO considering using Concero for their own company? I'll let Donald answer that, and then we'll raffle off the Yeti Pinga backpack.
Sure. I'd say go for it. If you, especially, in our situation, we had basically nothing from a finance and accounting standpoint before Concero. They came in, and it was before my time, so I wasn't there for the full implementation. But from what I understand, Concero was up and running in August 2018. They had bought Tridium bought the company at the end of June 2018. Basically a 45-day implementation when where Concero was taking things over, and so there's it can get up and running quickly. They come in with all the process figured out, the accounting system, the accounts payable, the expense reporting process, all that stuff sort of comes out of the box and is well thought out and works. You can customize it as much as you want. I'd say if you interviewed my team, they would certainly say that Donald has unique needs and Pelletas has unique needs. And so we've been able to customize everything that we needed to, but not had to worry about selecting our tech stack to begin with and then fitting it all together and making sure it runs. And then obviously all the hiring and firing and training that goes along with just managing people. We don't have to worry about that. So it can really give you as a CFO, the ability to focus your energy on the things that probably your boss wants you to, and less on the things that aren't perceived as adding value as much. So focusing on the strategic things.
I've heard that before, Donald. Back office in a box. Concero's like a back office in a box.
Yep, it's a good
All
thing.
right. Joe, I've got the Yeti Panga backpack right here. So one lucky winner. I'm using it like a fishbowl, actually. So I've got everybody's names in the bottom here. So we'll pick out the lucky winner, which is Peter Axelrod. Peter, I will be sending this to you. And I hope you enjoy it at the beach or hiking or wherever this summer might take you. Joe, I'll let you say goodbye to everyone. And I will also say thank you to everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you. As Bridget said, it's really a pleasure to have all of you, especially midday. I know we completely understand how busy you all are, and really appreciate you taking the time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Bridget. We'd be happy to accommodate and help. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.